The lights of Studio 6B burned brighter than usual that evening, casting long reflections on the polished floor like spotlights in a courtroom. The crowd, mid-laughter, froze as if the air itself had been put on trial. Something unscripted had cracked through the polished surface of The Tonight Show, and for once, no cue cards could save the moment. Ryan Gosling stood center stage, not in character, not as Ken, not as the romantic heartthrob or the reluctant action hero, but as a man, pulled taut between performance and principle. A man who had just decided, before millions watching live, that he would no longer play the part. Fallon's smile flickered, as if unsure whether to keep hosting or start explaining. His fingers gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles whitening. Under the pressure of forced levity, the audience shifted in their seats, confused, curious. A few nervous chuckles floated up, then died like raindrops on glass. "You okay, Ryan?" Jimmy asked, his voice too upbeat, too rehearsed. It bounced off the silence like a rubber ball in an empty hallway. Ryan didn't answer. Not at first. He looked out across the crowd, then back at Fallon. His jaw clenched once, eyes narrowed, with anger, but with something colder, something sharper. A clean break with whatever contract the stage had demanded of him. "This isn't what I came here for," he said, voice low, steady. Jimmy blinked, a chuckle trembling in his throat. "You mean the interview?" Or the Gosling shook his head. "No," he said. "The performance." There it was. The shift. The room changed shape. The lights suddenly felt hotter, harsher. The laughter that had filled every break now seemed weaponized. Even the Roots, always ready with a well-timed beat, sat silent, eyes fixed on the actor who was refusing to play along. In that moment, Ryan Gosling wasn't an actor. He was a witness taking the stand. A man cross-examined not by Fallon but by the unspoken expectations of late-night television, the jokes, the smiles, the self-deprecation wrapped in applause. And he said no. He turned, walked, a single step at first, then another. Fallon stood halfway, unsure whether to call him back or let him go. "Ryan," Jimmy said, voice softer now. "Come on, man. It's just a bit." Gosling stopped. At the edge of the set, silhouetted by the glow of the exit sign, the audience watched as if this were the final scene of a film they hadn't realized was drama. "It's never just a bit," Gosling said, not turning around. Then he left. The studio went still. For a second, Fallon's face crumpled not with sadness, but confusion. His smile fell completely now, replaced by something raw and too human for primetime. A producer's voice crackled faintly from the wings. The stage manager gestured frantically toward the commercial cue, but Fallon just stood there, staring as if he, too, had been caught off guard by the truth that had just walked off his stage. Moments later, the screen cut to black. The network faded in a preloaded ad for insurance. But those watching live, they didn't forget. The clip would be replayed in slow motion by morning. Analysts would call it a rupture in the reality of entertainment. Fans would hashtag it as a stand for integrity. And critics, they'd call it a publicity stunt. But none of them were there when it happened. When the laughter stopped. When the camera caught a man choosing silence over performance. When Ryan Gosling, in full view of America, prosecuted the institution with nothing more than a quiet exit and a refusal to play along. The lights dimmed just enough to cast long shadows over the sleek desk where Fallon sat. His smile now thin, fragile. The audience shifted uneasily, murmurs filling the void left by Gosling's abrupt departure. It was no longer just entertainment. It was an unspoken trial unfolding live on national television. Jimmy cleared his throat, voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "Well, folks, sometimes things don't go as planned." His eyes flicked toward the exit where Gosling had disappeared, then back to the crowd. That's the unpredictability of live television. But beneath the rehearsed politeness, a more charged conflict simmered. What had broken the surface wasn't just a moment of discomfort. It was a fracture in the performative contract between guest and host. The light-hearted banter had collided headfirst with something raw and uncompromising. Earlier in the interview, Fallon had steered the conversation toward Gosling's latest film. The crowd had expected the usual mix of charm and rehearsed jokes. But instead, Gosling deflected with clipped answers, eyes distant. Then came the question that changed everything, a probing inquiry about his recent activism. A topic Fallon had tiptoed around until now. "Some say your involvement in these causes is divisive," Fallon had asked, voice carefully neutral. "Do you think that's fair?" The room had tensed. Gosling's jaw tightened. He paused, weighing his words. "Divisive for whom?" He replied quietly. "Maybe it's uncomfortable for those unwilling to face the truth. The question became less about politics and more about authenticity, about a man unwilling to play the scripted role, challenging the expectations imposed on him by the entertainment machine. Every word that followed chipped away at the glossy surface of late-night television, exposing the fault lines beneath. The audience, once eager for laughter, now sat captivated by the unfolding ideological clash. This was no longer a simple talk show, it was a high-stakes courtroom drama, and Ryan Gosling had taken the stand against an invisible adversary far greater than Fallon's desk or his carefully curated smile. The tension rippled outward, backstage whispers, social media stirring, fans debating the morality of the walkout. Each moment pulled the story tighter, the stakes higher. Gosling wasn't just a guest anymore, he was a symbol, a man who had refused to sacrifice his truth on the altar of performance. And as the cameras cut away, the echoes of that confrontation lingered, a challenge laid bare in the glow of the studio lights, demanding an answer yet to come. Ryan Gosling's reputation had always been a paradox, a celebrated actor known for his quiet intensity, yet fiercely private about his beliefs. Behind the scenes, he had long resisted the spotlight beyond his craft, wary of the machinery that demanded performance at the expense of authenticity. Tonight, that resistance boiled to the surface. Fallon, by contrast, was the consummate late-night host, the smiling conduit of light-hearted escapism, the master of charm who navigated every interview with practiced ease. To him, the stage was a sanctuary of controlled chaos, a place where humor diffused tension and no question was too sharp if delivered with a grin. But in this courtroom of lights and cameras, the collision was inevitable. Fallon embodied the late-night institution, a show built on laughter and fleeting moments, while Gosling represented a rising tide of celebrities refusing to be mere entertainers, demanding to be heard as individuals with convictions and vulnerabilities. The ideological clash unfolded in subtle gestures and loaded silences. Fallon leaned forward, offering a half-smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You know, people come on this show expecting some fun, a little laughter. Don't you think your fans want that too?" Gosling met the challenge, voice calm but resolute. "I think they want honesty. And sometimes honesty isn't easy or funny." A murmur swept through the audience. The band quieted, sensing the shift from scripted lightness to raw truth. This was more than an interview, it was a cross-examination. Fallon pressed gently, seeking to maintain the facade, but the underlying question hung heavy. Should a man sacrifice his truth for the sake of entertainment? Was the demand for perpetual levity a form of censorship? Gosling's silence spoke volumes, a refusal to capitulate to expectations that felt increasingly hollow. The ideological stakes were no longer abstract, they were personal, tangled in career risk and public perception. As the tension mounted, the audience found themselves divided. Some admired Gosling's integrity, others felt Fallon was owed respect for keeping the night alive. The courtroom drama wasn't in a judge's chamber, it was here, in the eyes of millions watching a man challenge the norms of celebrity and the late-night machine that consumes it. And so the night stretched on, the battle lines drawn not in words alone, but in the charged atmosphere of a stage where truth and performance wrestled for dominance. The conversation took a sudden, sharper turn. Fallon, sensing the growing unease in the room, decided to test the waters with a question he knew could stir the patter, question wrapped in the guise of casual curiosity but loaded with implication. "So," Fallon began, voice light but probing, "you've been quite vocal about your activism lately. Some say it's stirring up trouble. Don't you think that's a bit divisive?" The word hung in the air like a gavel's knock. Gosling's eyes darkened. The audience held their breath. The band's rhythm faltered. Gosling's reply was deliberate, each word measured. Divisive for whom? For those who prefer comfort over change. For those unwilling to confront inconvenient truths. Fallon's smile tightened, an unspoken challenge shimmering beneath. "But don't you worry, it might alienate some fans. Maybe cost you some roles." The room's temperature seemed to rise, tension crackling like electricity. Gosling leaned forward slightly, voice low but unwavering. "I'd rather lose a role than lose myself. Integrity isn't a bargaining chip." This exchange wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a battle over the soul of celebrity itself. The audience, caught between empathy and expectation, sensed they were witnessing a rare moment of unfiltered conviction. Amid the polarized voices, the narrative remained unresolved. The ideological clash sparked deeper questions about authenticity, the commodification of truth, and the pressures placed on those in the public eye. In this ongoing debate, Gosling's act of walking off late-night television became emblematic, dramatic, case study in the tension between spectacle and sincerity, and the uneasy dance celebrities navigate on the cultural stage. In the weeks that followed, Ryan Gosling took a deliberate step back from the glare of the spotlight. Rather than retreat into silence, he chose moments of measured clarity to reshape the narrative on his own terms. Appearing at a carefully arranged charity event, Gosling spoke not as the rebellious actor who walked off a late-night stage, but as a man seeking to reconcile art with authenticity. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of experience and conviction. "I walked away because sometimes silence speaks louder than any scripted line," he said. "Truth is rarely comfortable, but it's essential." In an op-ed published shortly thereafter, he reflected on the cost and necessity of standing firm. He acknowledged the risks: potential alienation, career uncertainty, but framed them as the price of integrity. "To remain silent is to consent," he wrote, "and I refuse to consent to a world that values spectacle over substance." Jimmy Fallon, for his part, issued a brief but respectful statement acknowledging the tension but expressing hope for mutual understanding. "Ryan's passion for truth is clear," Fallon said. "Our paths may differ, but respect remains." The public response to this exchange felt less like a verdict and more like a beginning, a moment of poetic justice, where the quiet exit became a catalyst for honest dialogue cinematically. The final scene wasn't a dramatic confrontation, but a quiet reaffirmation, a man reclaiming his voice amid the noise, a late-night host recognizing the evolving landscape, and an audience invited to witness the complex interplay of truth, performance, and conscience. Ryan Gosling's walk-off was no longer just an act of rebellion. It had become a turning point, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful statement is made, not through words, but through the courage to walk away and demand a new stage altogether.